Welcome back to my channel, USA Liberty World Coin. Pull up a chair, get comfortable, because today we're going to talk about something you've probably held 100 times without a second thought. I want you to picture a coin that looks like it spent the last 50 years rattling around the bottom of a cup holder. Let's get started. Picked up a layer of grime somewhere in a parking lot, got scratched by keys, and dropped on pavement more times than anyone can remember. That's the kind of quarter we're looking at today. A 1965 Washington quarter, the one with Liberty on the front, an eagle on the back, and an overall appearance that screams pocket change. It's dirty, it's worn, the edges are soft, and you'd be tempted to just toss it back into a jar or spin it on a soda without a single regret. But here's where that slow curiosity starts to creep in, because that ugly, beat-up little coin might just be hiding something that turns it from spare change into real money. Let me tell you why the 1965 quarter exists in the first place, because that's where the story gets interesting. Up until 1964, our quarters were made of 90% silver, which gave them a distinct ring when you dropped them and a certain weight in your palm. But silver prices started climbing, and the government realized it was costing more to make the coins than they were worth. So in 1965, they made a dramatic switch to a copper-nickel clad composition, a pure copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel. That's the quarter most of us grew up with, the one that feels lighter and sounds kind of dull when you flip it. So a normal 1965 quarter is common, worth exactly 25 cents and nothing special at all. But here's the twist that keeps collectors awake at night. In the chaos of that transition year, a small number of 1,965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. That means there are quarters out there dated 1965 that are actually made of 90% silver, and they look almost identical to the clad ones unless you know exactly what to check. So how do you tell if your grimy, scratched-up quarter is one of those valuable mistakes? Start by looking at the edge. That's the easiest clue without any special tools. A normal 1965 clad quarter will show a thin copper-colored line running right through the middle of the edge, like a brown stripe separating the two nickel layers. A silver planchet 1965 quarter will show no copper at all. The edge will be a consistent gray or silver color all the way around, just like a pre-1965 quarter. Next, if you have a simple kitchen scale that measures in grams, a standard clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, while a silver era quarter weighs roughly 6.25 grams. It's a small difference, but it's real. You can also listen to the sound. Drop a known clad quarter on a table, then drop your suspect coin. Silver has a higher-pitched, longer-lasting ring, almost musical, whereas clad makes a shorter, duller thud. And don't forget to check the date and mint mark. All 1965 quarters have no mint mark, so that's normal, but the absence of a mint mark doesn't tell you anything by itself. What you're hunting for is that combination of a 1965 date and the physical properties of silver. Now let me say this clearly because it's the heart of today's video. This coin, even in rough, ugly condition, can carry surprising value. Collectors don't care if it's dirty or scratched or worn smooth around Liberty's hair. They care about the error itself. I've seen authenticated 1965 silver quarters in what we call good condition, heavily circulated with visible wear, sell for around $850. Move up to a slightly nicer one with fewer abrasions and more detail, and you're looking at $1,300 without much trouble. A really sharp example that somehow avoided heavy pocket work can bring $2,100. And if the coin is what dealers call extremely fine, with most of the original luster still hiding under the grime, we're talking $3,400. And for the best of the best, a coin that looks like it barely changed hands and sat in a drawer for 50 years, the value can climb to $4,700 or even more, depending on who's bidding that day. That's real money for a coin that probably looks like trash to anyone who doesn't know what they're holding. You might be thinking, well, my coin is really beat up, it's dark and stained, and there's a scratch right across Washington's face, so it can't be worth anything. But that's exactly the point. Even ugly coins can be valuable, especially error coins where the value comes from the mistake itself, not from pristine beauty. A silver 1965 quarter with heavy wear still has that silver planchet, still has the wrong metal composition, still has the historic transition error that makes collectors hungry for it. In fact, a well-worn but genuine error often sells faster than a high-end example because more collectors can afford the lower price point. And here's a little secret. Some of the most valuable coins ever discovered were found in rolls from the bank, in old coffee cans, or in junk drawers, looking absolutely terrible. Dirt and scratches don't erase the error. They just hide it from people who give up too easily. So please, whatever you do, do not clean this coin. I know it's tempting to take a little baking soda and water, or a polishing cloth, or even just a hard rub with your thumb to shine it up. But cleaning is the fastest way to destroy any potential value. Collectors want original surfaces, even if they're dark or stained. Once you clean a coin, you leave microscopic scratches that are obvious under magnification, and you strip away the natural patina that took decades to form. A clean coin is worth a fraction of what the same coin in original condition would bring. In the case of a rare error, like the 1965 silver quarter, cleaning can cut the value in half or worse. Leave the dirt, leave the grime, leave the dark spots. They tell the story of where that coin has been, and serious buyers respect that. Take a few minutes today to go through your change jar, your old wallet, the ashtray in your car, or that pile of coins on your dresser. Pull out every 1965 quarter you find and stack them side by side. Check each edge under a bright light. Weigh them if you have a scale, and listen to the sound they make when you tap them against a harder surface. You probably won't find a silver error. I'm not going to promise you that, but the chance is real enough that thousands of people have searched and some have actually scored. And even if you don't hit the jackpot, you'll learn to look at pocket change differently, with a little more attention and a little less hurry. That's the quiet thrill of coin hunting, the feeling that any old quarter could be the one that pays for a weekend trip or that thing you've been saving for. Anyway, that's the story of the 1965 quarter, the dirty little coin that might just be worth more than you ever imagined. Keep your eyes open, keep your coins dirty, and never clean anything until you know exactly what you have. If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear about any interesting quarters you've come across. And who knows, maybe that beat-up Liberty in your pocket is already worth a whole lot more than 25 cents. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one. Next coin, take a close look at this coin, a 1977 Washington quarter, and just observe what you see. The surface is dull, almost chalky, with a muted gray tone that comes from years of sliding across counters, rubbing against keys, and landing on pavement. There's a shallow scratch running through Liberty's hair. The edges are soft from moderate wear, and the high points, like the top of her head and the eagle's chest feathers, have lost most of their original luster. You might even spot a small gouge near the date or a dark stain that looks like old soda residue. Analytically speaking, this coin presents as heavily circulated, unremarkable, and exactly the kind of pocket change that most people would dismiss without a second glance. And that's precisely why it gets misjudged, because the assumption that a worn, dull, and damaged 1977 quarter has zero value is often wrong, sometimes spectacularly wrong. Here's why this particular year is so often overlooked. The 1977 quarter belongs to the clad era that began in 1965, meaning it has a copper core and nickel outer layers, so there's no silver content to grab your attention. It was minted in massive numbers, hundreds of millions at both the Philadelphia facility, no mint mark, and the Denver facility, small d mint mark. By any normal standard, a common clad quarter from the late 70s is worth exactly 25 cents, and coin dealers see bins of them every day. But hidden within that huge production run are a handful of striking errors and varieties that collectors actively hunt. The most famous is the 1977 double die obverse, where the date, the word liberty, or the motto, "I in God we trust," shows clear, unmistakable doubling, like a ghost image slightly offset from the main lettering. Because this error is subtle and easily missed, most people glance at a worn 1977 quarter, see the normal design, and toss it back into the jar, never realizing they just handled something that could pay their electric bill. To understand why a worn 1977 quarter still excites collectors, you have to go back to how the mint operated in the late 1970s. The equipment was aging, quality control wasn't what it is today, and die pairs would sometimes shift during the hubbing process, creating double dies that went unnoticed for years. The 1977 double die is one of those classic look-again varieties. Strong examples show clear separation on the letters of Liberty, especially the B, E, and R, and sometimes on the date numbers 1, 9, 7, 7. The doubling appears as extra thickness, a notched edge, or a split serif. Even on a heavily circulated coin where the surfaces are scratched and dull, that doubling remains visible under good light and a simple magnifying glass. That's the key insight. Condition matters, yes, but for error coins, the error itself is what carries the value, not pristine beauty. A worn 1977 double die quarter might be ugly, but it's still undeniably a double die, and collectors will pay real money for that. So how do you check your own 1977 quarters for this potential jackpot? First, flip the coin to the obverse side with the date and Liberty's profile. Get a magnifying glass or even your phone's zoom camera and focus on the word Liberty running along the top. Look at the vertical lines on the letters. Do you see any extra thickness or a second outline slightly to the right or left? Then check the date, specifically the first 7 in 1977. On a true double die, that first 7 often shows a clear notch or a split at the bottom. Finally, examine the motto, "I in God we trust." The doubling tends to show most strongly on the G, the D, and the T. If you see any of these features, even faintly, you have something special. Don't worry if the coin is dark, scratched, or has a ding on the rim. None of that erases the doubling. In fact, many of the most valuable examples have been found in old coin jars, parking lot change, and even Coinstar reject trays, looking every bit like junk. Now let's talk numbers, because that's what turns curiosity into action. A genuine 1977 double die quarter in heavily circulated condition, what dealers call good or very good, with obvious, where but clear doubling, typically sells for around $920. If the coin shows a bit less wear and you can still see the original mint luster hiding under the grime, the price jumps to about $1,650. Step up to a nicely preserved example with only light circulation and full details, and you're looking at $2,750. For a coin in extremely fine condition where the doubling is crisp and the surfaces have only minor marks, the value reaches $3,850. And for the truly exceptional pieces, a 1977 double die that somehow stayed in a drawer for 40 years in mint state condition with original luster and no damage, the price can soar to $4,900 or even higher at a well-attended auction. Those are not fantasy numbers. They are verified sale prices from major coin auctions and dealer networks over the last few years. I want to repeat that point because it's the core of today's video. This coin carries strong value, even when it looks beaten up. The collector market for double dies has grown steadily, and the 1977 variety is scarce enough that demand consistently outstrips supply. You don't need a perfect coin. You just need a genuine error. A scratched, worn, dirty 1977 quarter with verifiable doubling is worth far more than a perfect, shiny 1977 quarter that's completely normal. So don't let the appearance fool you. That dark stain near the rim? Ignore it. That deep scratch across Liberty's cheek? Doesn't matter. The only question is whether the doubling exists. If it does, you've turned pocket change into a 3-figure or 4-figure payday. If it doesn't, you've lost nothing but a few minutes of your time. Before you do anything else, let me add the standard but critical warning. Do not clean this coin. I know it's tempting to rub it with a cloth, dip it in vinegar, or use an eraser to make the details pop. But cleaning leaves microscopic abrasions that permanently alter the surface. And for an error coin like this, any hint of cleaning will cut the value dramatically, sometimes by 70% or more. Collectors want the original surface, complete with its natural patina and honest wear. That dirt and those scratches tell the story of how the coin survived for nearly 50 years in circulation. Leave it exactly as it is. If you need better visibility, just use good light and a magnifier. A dirty but authentic double die is a treasure. A cleaned one is a tragedy. So here's the simple takeaway. Go through your change jar, your car's cup holder change, or that old coffee can in the garage. Pull out every 1977 quarter you find. Look closely at Liberty, the date, and I in God we trust. If you see doubling, you've found something special. Even if you don't, you've learned to see past the dull, worn surface to the possibility underneath. That's the quiet thrill of coin hunting, knowing that value doesn't always shine. Thanks for watching, and happy hunting. Second coin you're cleaning out your grandmother's attic, or maybe you finally opened that dusty coffee tin in the back of your own closet, the one you haven't touched since you moved 3 apartments ago. Your fingers brush against cold metal, and you pull out a handful of coins that have been sitting in the dark for decades. Among them is a 1987 D quarter, and your first reaction is almost disappointment. It looks ugly, discolored, with a strange brownish-green tint around the edges, like it got wet years ago and never fully dried. The surface has lost its original shine, replaced by a dull, almost gritty texture, and there's a long, thin scratch running from Liberty's neck down toward the date. You almost toss it back into the jar, because who would want a quarter that looks this sad? But something makes you pause. Maybe it's the weight of it in your palm, or the memory of whose hands might have held it. That pause is where the story begins. Here's why that ugly, discolored 1987 D quarter might be the most valuable coin in that entire jar. Most people assume that any quarter from the late 1980s is common, worthless, and only worth face value, especially when it looks damaged or stained. But the 1987 D has a secret that even experienced collectors sometimes miss. You see, that year, the Denver Mint produced millions of quarters, but a small batch received a striking error that went unnoticed for years: a double die reverse. That means during the minting process, the die that stamps the back of the coin shifted slightly between impressions, creating a ghost-like doubling on the eagle's tail feathers, the branches in the eagle's claws, and the letters in United States of America. This doubling is subtle, almost invisible to the naked eye, but under magnification, it becomes unmistakable. And because the error is on the reverse, most people only glance at the front of the quarter, see a normal Liberty head, and move on. That's why this coin gets overlooked again and again, sitting in jars and drawers for nearly 40 years, waiting for someone like you to take a closer look. So how do you check the discolored, scratched 1987 D quarter without any special equipment? Flip it over to the eagle side and get a magnifying glass. Even a cheap one from a drugstore will work. Look closely at the eagle's tail feathers. On a normal quarter, those feathers are sharp, clean lines. On a double die reverse, you'll see a faint second outline overlapping the main lines, like a shadow that doesn't quite line up. Then move your eyes to the words quarter dollar. The doubling often shows up on the letters Q, U, and R, where the extra metal creates a notched or split appearance. Finally, check the olive branch in the eagle's right claw. The leaves there might show clear separation. None of this requires the coin to be shiny or perfect. In fact, the natural wear and discoloration can actually make the doubling easier to see by removing distracting reflections. That dark stain near the rim? Ignore it. That scratch across the eagle's wing? Doesn't matter. The error is still there, hiding in plain sight. Now let's talk about why this ugly coin could change your week or even your month. The 1987 D double die reverse is rare enough that demand from error collectors has pushed prices steadily upward. Even in heavily circulated condition, where the coin has been in pocket change for years and shows obvious where like flattened hair details and soft rim edges, a genuine example still sells for around $780. If your coin has been sitting in that jar for most of its life and shows only light circulation, maybe some minor scratches, but all the major design elements are clear, the value jumps to about $1,250. Step up to a coin with very few marks and most of its original luster still present under that grime, and you're looking at $2,050. For an example that's been carefully stored and shows only the slightest wear, what dealers call extremely fine, the price reaches $3,300. And for the best of the best, a 1987 D that somehow avoided circulation entirely and was pulled from a mint set or a roll, preserving its mint state surfaces despite that odd discoloration. That coin can bring $4,600 or even more at the right auction. Those numbers are real, and they come from collectors who don't care about beauty. They care about rarity. This is the moment where I need to remind you that appearance is almost always misleading with coins. That weird brownish-green discoloration you see, that's often just environmental toning, a natural chemical reaction between the metal and the air or the old paper in the jar. Some collectors actually prefer tone coins because they're original and untouched. The scratch across Liberty's neck? That happened decades ago, probably before you were born, and it doesn't erase the double die error. The only thing that could destroy value is you trying to fix it. So here's the warning that every coin expert will shout from the rooftops. Do not clean this coin. Do not rub it with baking soda. Do not soak it in vinegar. Do not use a jewelry cloth. And definitely do not take a toothbrush to it. Cleaning leaves microscopic scratches that are permanent. And for an error coin like this, any hint of cleaning can cut the value by 70% or more. A dirty, ugly, genuine double die is a treasure. A clean one is just a damaged quarter. I want you to really feel the weight of that. You didn't go out looking for this coin. You weren't at a coin show or an auction. You were just sorting through old memories, maybe after a loss, maybe during a quiet afternoon, and this little piece of metal landed in your hand. It doesn't look like much. It's discolored, scratched, dull, and easy to dismiss. But hidden inside that humble appearance is something that connects you to a mistake made at the Denver Mint over 35 years ago, a tiny error that turned a few thousand quarters into hidden treasures. And now that you know what to look for, that ugly coin transforms from pocket change into a story you'll tell your friends. You didn't need a metal detector or a dealer connection. You just needed a magnifying glass and a little patience. So here's what you do next. Pull out every 1987D quarter from that jar, that drawer, that old coin purse. Don't clean any of them. Get a bright light and a magnifier, and check each reverse for doubling on the eagle's tail feathers, the olive branch, and the lettering. If you see anything suspicious, take clear photos and reach out to a reputable coin dealer or submit it to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. Even if the coin is ugly, even if it's dark and scratched, a certified double die is worth real money. And if you don't find one, you've lost nothing but a few minutes, and you've gained a new way of seeing the world. Because once you learn that hidden value can live inside the most beaten up, discolored, forgotten coins, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Thanks for listening, and take a closer look at that old jar one more time. You never know what's waiting.